Good morning, and my name is James Moser. I am your worship associate this morning and pleased to be here with you. A welcome to all of you who are present in the room, and as this is our hybrid service, a welcome also to those of you tuning in online. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a welcoming congregation. We strive to be, and we are welcoming regardless of our ethnicity, our history, our personal burdens, or our life choices. This is a place where all are welcome. This week, while we are recognizing the Christian season of Easter as it continues, this week we also acknowledge Yom HaShoah, Jewish Holocaust Remembrance Day. This morning, our worship leader is the Rev Paula Maiorano, and she is a member of our congregation. She'll guide us with a message on healthy religious pluralism. We also welcome our guest musicians, David Hearn on organ and piano, Susan Ryan on flute, and our Cindy Cohen as our hymn leader. Finally, two announcements for this morning. The live stream at First Unitarian Spring brochure is available to pick up in the back of the sanctuary near the name tags or on the welcome table in the parish hall, and please take one to share with your friends. And secondly, the ordination of First Unitarian member Latifa Griffin Rogers occurs today, the 16th of April, at the Unitarian Universalist Society of Germantown at 4 p.m. Our minister, Reverend Larry Pierce, is going to be attending and bringing a gift from the congregation to give to her on our behalf. We celebrate her accomplishment as we've been following her growth for years. Now, let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
It's a joy, really a joy to be here and to celebrate that this was my member congregation from the very beginning of my journey in Unitarian Universalism. I wore the robe that was given to me at ordination and the stole that was made by a former member here, Nancy Davis, and the chalice was embroidered by June Peterson. And she almost didn't recognize it, but then she remembered, right, June? So let us center ourselves once again for worship. And this is a reading called "The Wholeness is Our Practice of Resistance," resistance being our soul matters theme of the month. Although there remains too much evidence of the world breaking apart at coastlines, congregational hearings and kitchen tables inside the quiet places of your heart and mine, there does reside still the seeds, the longing to return to this knowing that we belong to each other, this earth, this life, to remember ourselves and all of our lost pieces, beloved in ways that cannot be undone, to dwell here in the healing, this hope, this wholeness is our practice of resistance. Even in rage, we refuse to relinquish gratitude or joy. Come, let us worship together. And now, one of my favorite hymns. It is 318, "We Would Be One." And please, after the... That's what I thought. It's chalice lighting time. It's okay. James and I have just started working together. This is our first time.
Oh, if you have a chalice at home, we invite you to join us in lighting it at this time as I read these words from Elizabeth McMaster. We light our flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek. In the search for truth, may we be just. In the search for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find peace. Now, please rise as you are able, and we will sing together "We Would Be One," number 318. And please remain standing after the hymn for our affirmation. remain standing as we share together our unison statement of affirmation. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action. You may be seated.
I see that you're centering yourself, waiting for my prayer, of the spoken prayer, that is. I'm going to begin it with a meditation, and I suggest that if your feet are not planted on the floor, or if you're sitting in a way that obstructs your breath at all, that you sit up. Notice your breath as you breathe it in. Notice your breath as you breathe it out. Breathing in, healing oxygen, life-giving oxygen. Breathing out, life-giving vapors that feed the organic life around us. A perfect balance of the interdependent world in which we live. May we remember this world daily and moment to moment. May we find ourselves in the presence of this awareness of our breath that we do not give ourselves. We could deprive ourselves of it, but we cannot give it to ourselves. It's a free gift from the source of life that some call the universe. Others call the void, many God, I, the mystery. And I invite you to sit in this mystery, in a shared silence, noticing your breath and offering your own prayer to that and for that, and on behalf of that which is sacred and holy to you. And so from this prayer within ourselves, we move out to share the prayers of the people. We are the people. One of our people, Dale Blakeney, needs our special concern and comfort, as her fiancé, Reuben, died peacefully in his nursing home last night. I understand, Dale, that it's been a really long struggle, and that you're holding up well, and that you needed to be here with your people today. And we also bring to our mind the people that we're most concerned with. Perhaps we're worried about them, or perhaps we're celebrating them. Or maybe it's an issue that we feel drawn to pray for, or to hold in our hearts with hope for its what? Its positive outcome. Or a celebration, like Earth Day coming up Saturday. May we be with these prayers more vocally, sharing, if you wish, the name or the concern or the celebration, your reasons aloud. We'll be attuned to one another so we don't all speak at once.
Mary Catherine Kelly. Mina.
Our earth. May these prayers of the people and the concern that surrounds them be immersed in healing, love, and community.
Our reading this morning is Toward a Pragmatic Pluralism by Lori L. Patton, who is the Winship Professor and Chair of the Department of Religion at Emory University. In the 21st century, there are no more distant strangers. There are only proximate ones. People in Afghanistan or Iraq or Peru whom we see on television may well be our neighbors in subsequent months. Our movement across the globe, our movement across the globe guarantees that we will sit next to each other in airports and on trains. It guarantees a closer network than we ever thought possible. We have yet to grasp the basic ethical result of such globally touted connectedness. There are no more distant strangers. We still use words for interreligious relationships that assume distance. Words like tolerance and dialogue. These are no longer effective words for the work that must be done between religions and within religions. They simply imply a sense of ambivalence about the entire undertaking of interreligious conversation. To say, I tolerate you, implies condescension at the very best. And dialogue connotes something intermittent and episodic. Much of the critique of interreligious dialogue in recent decades has been that it is usually short-lived and its after effects are superficial. We need new words to acknowledge the state of proximity in which we now exist with the so-called strangers. The phrase I have been using is pragmatic pluralism, says Ms. Patton. This consists of the moment when one religion needs another in order to be itself. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks speaks about this idea as the dignity of difference. Well, there are also living examples of pragmatic pluralism all around us. One was told me by a Christian activist who frequented a monastery in Bosnia during the war there. The head monk also ran a choir and was determined to hold regular rehearsals even as the bombs fell in the countryside. One man kept coming to the rehearsals, staying apart from the others, and slipping away as soon as the rehearsal was over. Finally, the monk asked the man where he was from. The man told him he was a Muslim from a neighboring village. The monk asked him whether he was interested in becoming a Christian. "Oh, no," said the man, "not at all. I just become a much better Muslim when I sing in your choir." And there are examples of pragmatic pluralism within traditions as well as between them. In one small town in upstate New York, relationships between Orthodox and Reformed Jews had grown sour, bad. One winter day, the Orthodox synagogue burned down, and about a week after the fire, the rabbi of the Orthodox synagogue was surprised to see the Reformed rabbi at his door with a large donation. "Without you being Orthodox, we couldn't be Reformed," he said. "So you'd better rebuild." Perhaps the most moving example was the singing of psalms after September 11, 2001. Jewish tradition teaches that after someone has died and before the body is buried, one sits nearby and recites psalms called the Shemrot. The women of Stern College, a Jewish women's college in Manhattan, knew that the refrigerator truck with the remains of the victims might well contain Jewish ones. So they set up a chair and sang the Shemrot, and people gathered. They were not only Jewish people, but secular people, Buddhist people, Muslim people. The women from Stern College did this for Jewish reasons, but the mourners all around the city needed their ritual as well. Situations of pragmatic pluralism are frequently ones of loss and disaster, but they need not be. They can be any situation where the perceived human value is communicated through, yet transcends, a religious tradition. They are focused on logistics and not talk, action and not merely words, the making of music, the maintenance of bricks and mortar, the proper treatment of the dead. They create a connection among strangers that lasts longer than an episodic conversation. And most importantly, they force us to see that there are no more distant strangers, and that we need a new ethic to reflect this fact.
Isn't that a marvelous reading? When James sent it to me, I just loved it. And wrote teeny little bit shorter of a sermon just to accommodate the length of the reading. We're a good team. I also want to thank our musicians. So far, the music has taken me as I listen to a deep place, which I like when I'm leading worship. Thank you. And I need to tell everybody that this really feels good to be here. I've not spoken from this pulpit since pre-pandemic times. And if you at home watching don't see me looking at you enough, I'm looking at you now, it's because pre-pandemic times we didn't need the hybrid worship. But now that we have it, it's actually one of the few good things that have come out of the pandemic, hybrid worship, that is. First Unitarian of Wilmington is the church where my spouse Giovanni and I first encountered our Unitarian Universalists, or for visitors, we say UU religion, a covenantal religion, which quickly became our ever-deepening and lifelong faith. As members know and visitors might not, our current covenant includes the principles, purposes, and sources of our Unitarian Universalist Association of Churches. They are found in Article 2 of our UUA bylaws. We express our value of religious pluralism explicitly with our sources of inspiration, and implicitly with the words that end Article 2. Grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches and ennobles our faith, we are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our vision. The new proposal to replace our Article 2 explicitly states our interconnected core values with specific call to action covenants for each. These core values are interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, and justice. All core values are rooted in love, the force of life holding our religious communities together. My focus this morning is our pluralism rooted in love. That gives rise to pragmatic pluralism as well. Pluralism rooted in love is a vision that acknowledges and respects the multitude of identities, beliefs, cultures, and perspectives that exist in the world, and seeks to build relationships and communities based on empathy, understanding, and works as a force that transcends boundaries and brings people together. Love inspires us to see beyond our differences, for love is not limited to romantic relationships. It encompasses a broader sense of interconnectedness and solidarity with all members of the human family. Universal love, if you will. Moreover, pluralism rooted in love recognizes that ignorance and fear are often at the root of division and conflict, and that knowledge and understanding can foster empathy and compassion. It promotes education that is inclusive, diverse, and respectful of different perspectives, and encourages lifelong learning as a means to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. If you want, you could sit up front instead of twisting your neck. My passion for pluralism rooted in love began with my early life experiences. For instance, the time I was rolling on the ground in a fight with a girl outside of my church who called me a greasy guinea. And then there was the day when I, a 14-year-old with a deep tan and ocean-frizzed hair, was thrown out of a bakery in Wildwood, New Jersey, as the owner yelled, "Get out of here, you dirty little..." He used the N-word. I surely became what today we call woke at that moment. Diana Eck, founder of the Harvard Pluralism Project, is author of a book that was published in 2001, and then a revision in 2002 following the 9/11 attack. Do you remember how we all sang "We Would Be One" the Sunday after that attack? Her book explores diversity and pluralism in the early 21st century. The title of this book is pretty much the book summary. The title? A New Religious America. How a Christian country, and she has the quotes, has become the world's most religiously diverse nation. In it, Eck describes the transformation of America's religious landscape and explores the implications of this new religious reality of America today. She wrote that the Immigration Act of 1965 eliminated the quotas linking immigration to national origins. Since then, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, Zoroastrians, and new varieties of Jews and Catholics have arrived from every part of the globe, radically altering the religious landscape of the United States. According to Eck, how Americans of all faiths and beliefs engage with one another in such abundance of diversity is one of our essential questions. Perhaps the most important challenge facing contemporary American society. Current research polls indicate that protecting our democracy is right at the top of voters' minds right now, along with the economy for the 2024 presidential election. In A New Religious America, Eck wrote that phrases like celebrate diversity and diversity is our strength misunderstand the meaning of diversity. Undeservedly, now let me say that again, undeservedly investing it with a positive meaning. She clarified that diversity is a neutral term with a range of possible consequences, everything possible from conflict to cooperation. It is only when diversity is proactively engaged towards positive ends that it will be transformed into pluralism. So, in other words, pluralism is diversity working for positive ends. In the early Catholic American, Italian-American immigrant community from which I emerged, family was central. It was our most important and primary value, even more important than church. It was essential to me that if or when Giovanni and I found and joined a church for ourselves after we had our children, that it would be one that was welcoming to my extended family and to his, should they choose to visit. I was rooted in a familial love, and that love and some of my early experiences, such as worried that I've described, did not make it easy for me to trust this. So much, in my mind, of the other Christian religions had been kind of established over and against the Catholics. Now, this is all history, but I was young. Anyway, these experiences and my love generated my passion for pluralism, and it led to my embracing our universalist roots of love. Now, in my earlier life, the distinction between diversity and pluralism really wasn't clear. But I had created an analogy about a mother-father God who had birthed an earth-sized dysfunctional family. Our job was to become healthy. Following our principles while simultaneously living out our pluralism was my path to health and led me to the work of ordained ministry. Over the years, I frequently preached and taught pluralism as a value, that pluralism was a central path to human freedom and to becoming a better human being. Unfortunately, I didn't emphasize that we were required to practice pluralism actively in order to achieve such an outcome. Indeed, I describe pluralistic as something we were, rather than pluralism as something we needed to do. So if we want to practice pluralism, which it's necessary in our circumstances, especially in the United States, how do we do it? How do we practice pluralism rooted in love? Well, it's first to, and very important, to acknowledge that true pluralism is a goal, not a state of being. Simply throwing people with diverse ideologies together does not necessarily lead to good relationships, wrote board chair of the Wyoming Interfaith Network, Carl Michael, in a weekly online newsletter. Mahatma Gandhi, the great prophet of India, said that we will never all think alike, and we shall always see truth in fragment and from different angles of vision. Now, I infer from Gandhi's life and work that practitioners of pluralism need a few common principles of practice. Nonviolence, violence was definitely one for Gandhi and his followers, but we need principles of practice in order for positive relationships to occur. And I would say nonviolence is probably at the minimum. For me, straighten this out, to practice pluralism is to establish these common principles, such as mutually acceptable approach to not an occasional dialogue, but deep dialogue, where one really gets to know the other, learns who the other is, in which one feels safe to articulate one's deepest thoughts. One of my core principles for this kind of dialogue that practices pluralism is the importance of understanding our separate realities. Richard Carlson, in his book, you might remember it, I love the title, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it's all small stuff, explains it well. And I quote him, "If you have traveled to foreign countries or seen depictions of them in movies, you are aware of vast differences among cultures. The principle of separate realities says that the differences among individuals is every bit as vast. Just as we wouldn't expect people of different cultures to see or do things as we could or do. In fact, we'd be disappointed if they did. This principle tells us that the individual differences in our ways of seeing the world prohibit this as well. It's not a matter of merely tolerating differences or putting up with them. I put that in. But of truly understanding and honoring the fact that it literally cannot be any other way. Carlson concludes, I have seen an understanding of this principle change lives. It can virtually eliminate quarrels. When we expect to see things differently, when we take it as a given that others will do things differently and react differently to the same stimuli, the passion we have for ourselves and for others rises dramatically. The moment we expect otherwise, the potential for conflict exists. That's the end of the quote. Understanding the principle of separate realities and practicing pluralism rooted in love requires a mindset of curiosity, humility, and empathy. One must step outside of our comfort zones, engage in meaningful conversations with others. You could do that with ourselves too, don't you think? And strive to understand and learn from the experiences and perspectives of others. When practiced with love, respect, and knowledge, pluralism does not fragment a society, it forms a bond, a moral glue that makes the group stronger. Stronger as we live our principles, and stronger in resisting the backlash of attacks, as well as stronger in extending the hand of assistance and comfort to those in need. Pluralism, rooted in love, embraces the idea of Ubuntu, a concept from African philosophy that emphasizes the interconnectedness and interdependence of all humanity. Ubuntu recognizes that we are all in this together. In his last Christmas Eve service before his assassination, our great American prophet, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., preached a sermon on the intrinsic interconnectedness of existence itself. His words, he had such a beautiful, booming voice, and they boomed out with, "We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied into a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. We are made to live together because of the interrelated structure of reality." Just 2 weeks ago, members of this congregation, and I was one of them, had an opportunity to participate in an interconnected dialogue as we got to know each other's thoughts on the proposed changes to our principles, sources, and purposes. It was a dialogue, I thought, that respected our individual separate realities. And I'm looking out and I see others like myself who were there. Its basis on the proposed changes, which will not only transform our principles, as I've been stating, into a series of core values rooted in love, it will ask us to make specific covenants to transform our core values into living expressions of our Unitarian Universalist faith. This interconnected dialogue process is another way of practicing pluralism rooted in love. So now, as we go forward together as religious people, let us learn these processes better in the safety of our church And let us take them outside the church walls, especially in engagement with people and communities who are different from ourselves. As Carl Carmichael of the Wisconsin Interfaith Network counsels, it's not enough for us to simply be a diverse group of faith communities that have somehow come together to form an association. We must learn that we have to learn each other's faith beliefs. Resist, there's that resistance again, resist the tendency to argue the rights or wrongs of some other person's beliefs, and learn to come together on common goals. For positive relationships to emerge, certain conditions are needed. Equal status among the various partners and parties, cooperation between the groups, and common goals. Pluralism, then, is the engagement of diversity toward these positive ends. Here Carmichael's quote ends. And my hope begins anew. For pluralism rooted in love can positively change the world. May we all practice and preach it, every one of us. May it be so. Amen. Shalom, blessed be. Namaste. May the light of the divine in each bless the world.
Thank you, Rev Paula. I hope you all feel a little stretched. Why do we give? Occasionally, I revisit that question, and in preparing for this morning, inevitably, my memory took me back to my childhood when I was in Sunday school and it was time to put my quarter on the plate, along with all of the other urchins that were there with me with their little handful of change. And it almost turned into a competition as to who could reach to the basket first. A very wise teacher called us to pause, stop what you're doing, take your money back into your hands, and think for a moment. And she asked us, why do you give? Whether she was genuinely looking for an answer or not, she got several. One of them was to help the church, to pay the minister. That might have been the minister's kid. To help our missionaries. Okay, said the teacher, those are all good reasons, but stop and think for a moment. That's where your money ends up. Why do you give it? Oh. So she asked us to hold a coin in our hand and look at it afresh. That coin represents what you're thankful for. When we give because we're thankful. That's where it starts. That was a few decades ago, and it has resonance in my memory, that little story. And with it, while I don't by any means dismiss the need of the church and the minister's salary and the work of the UU Association globally, when you give, stop and pause and recall. It's a gesture of gratitude. There are 4 ways that you can give, and they will appear on the screen in just a moment. But before we go there, let us share together our unison offering statement. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. Again, a thank you to David and to Susan for joining us today. If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join us as we extinguish the one in the sanctuary with these words, reiterated words, of Elizabeth McMaster. We have lit our flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek. In the search for truth, may we be just. In the search for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find peace.
Today's benediction is one written by my first Unitarian Universalist minister, the Reverend Bob Doss. For those who see God, I'm going to cry. For those who see God, may God be with you. For those who embrace life, may life return your affection. Return your affection. For those who seek a right path, may the way be found and the courage to take it step by step.
Would you please rise and sing?
Amen.